I stared at my phone, reading the text message for the third time, trying to make sense of words that felt like a punch to the gut. Mom's message was only 2 sentences long, but each word cut deeper than the last. Don't come for Christmas this year. You're not successful enough for our image. My hands trembled slightly as I set the phone down on my desk. 3 weeks until Christmas, and my own mother had just uninvited me from the family gathering because I embarrassed them. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 6 months ago, I'd become the CEO of Nextech Solutions, the software company. My family's real estate firm, desperately needed for their biggest contract ever. I could have told them. I could have corrected their assumptions about my modest life and quiet career. Instead, I stayed silent. I just watched and waited. The relationship with my family had been deteriorating for 5 years, but I could pinpoint exactly when things shifted from uncomfortable to unbearable. 3 years ago, my father died suddenly from a heart attack at 62. He'd built Westfield Development Group from nothing, turning a small construction company into one of the most respected real estate development firms in the region. My older brother Brandon inherited control of the company. He was 41, confident, and had worked alongside Dad for nearly 2 decades. My sister Stephanie, 38, slid naturally into the role of marketing director. She'd always had a talent for making things look good, even when the reality underneath was messier. Then there was me, Derek, the youngest at 34, the one who disappointed everyone by choosing software engineering over business, the one who went to state school instead of following Brandon to Yale, the one who seemed content with what my family called my little coding job instead of joining the family empire. Family dinners after Dad's death became exercises in endurance. Brandon would lean back in his chair at Mom's house, swirling expensive whiskey, and make comments about how I was still doing the computer thing. Stephanie would talk about her new luxury condo downtown, then ask about my apartment in a tone that made it clear she already knew it was modest, and found that fact vaguely embarrassing. Mom, Helen, who'd appointed herself the company's image consultant and held a seat on the board, would sigh heavily whenever distant relatives asked what I did for a living. He works in technology, she'd say, the same way someone might say he works in sanitation. Then she'd quickly pivot to Brandon's latest deal or Stephanie's feature in a local business magazine. I'd stopped trying to explain that software engineering was a legitimate career. I'd stopped defending my choices. Mostly, I just showed up less and less frequently, and nobody seemed to notice or care. But 6 months ago, everything changed for me professionally, even if my family never knew it. I'd been working at Nextech Solutions for 4 years, rising from senior developer to chief technology officer. The company specialized in proprietary project management systems for large-scale construction and development projects. Our software integrated everything from contractor scheduling to materials tracking to investor reporting. In an industry where delays cost millions and coordination failures could sink entire projects, our systems were becoming essential. When our CEO announced his retirement, the board approached me. They wanted someone who understood the technology deeply, someone who could guide the company through a planned expansion. The catch was timing. We were in the middle of sensitive merger negotiations with a European firm, and the board worried that announcing a new, relatively young CEO might spook potential partners. So they made me an offer. Take the position immediately, but let the outgoing CEO remain as the public face for 6 months, while serving as president under my direction. I accepted. The confidentiality agreement was strict. Only the board and top executives knew my true role. To the outside world, to our clients, to anyone who looked at our website or press releases, Thomas Brennan was still the CEO of Nextech Solutions. I'd thought about telling my family, but something stopped me. Partly it was the confidentiality agreement. Mostly, though, it was curiosity. I wanted to see if they'd ever ask about my life with genuine interest. If they'd ever look past their assumptions and actually see me. They never did. Not once in 6 months did Brandon or Stephanie or Mom ask how work was going, whether I'd gotten any promotions, if anything interesting was happening in my career. I was the unsuccessful one, the disappointing one, and that narrative was set in stone. Until the day I opened my work email and saw a proposal request from Westfield Development Group. My heart rate kicked up as I read the subject line: Partnership Proposal for Major Development Project. The email was addressed to the Nextech executive team. It outlined a massive mixed-use development project worth $87 million that Westfield was bidding on. They needed specialized software integration for the project, and they'd identified Nextech Solutions as their preferred partner. The proposal was professional, detailed, and desperate in a way that only someone who knew Brandon could detect. The language was careful, but the subtext was clear. Westfield needed this partnership badly. I scrolled down to see who'd signed the email. Brandon. My brother had no idea he was asking his unsuccessful little brother for help. I checked the calendar. The initial pitch meeting was scheduled for December 27th. 2 days after the Christmas, I was now banned from attending because I wasn't successful enough for the family image. I sat back in my chair and started laughing. Not a happy laugh. Something darker, edged with years of accumulated hurt and dismissal. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted. My chief operating officer, Marcus, knocked on my doorframe. "You okay? You look like you just got weird news." I turned my monitor so he could see the email. "We got a partnership proposal from Westfield Development Group." Marcus whistled low. "That's a solid account. Worth at least $2 million over 3 years if the project goes forward. You want me to set up the preliminary review?" I thought about Mom's text message, still burning in my phone. About Brandon's condescending comments at every family gathering. About Stephanie's pitying looks at my modest life. About being erased from Christmas because I embarrassed them. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Set up the review, but let's not rush it. Standard timeline for all evaluations." Marcus nodded and left. I turned back to my computer and pulled up Westfield's public financial records. What I saw made the situation even more interesting. The company had been struggling for the past 18 months. 3 major projects had gone significantly over budget due to coordination failures and contractor disputes. Their reputation for on-time delivery was slipping. This $87 million project wasn't just an opportunity for them, it was a lifeline, and they needed me to throw it. They just didn't know it yet. 2 weeks before Christmas, my phone rang with Brandon's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken directly in 3 months, communicating only through brief, obligatory text messages on birthdays. "Hey." Brandon's voice was warm, friendly even. "You busy?" "Just finishing up some work." "What's going on?" "I'm downtown for a meeting. Thought maybe we could grab dinner. Catch up. It's been too long, man." I was immediately suspicious. Brandon didn't do casual catch-up dinners, but curiosity won. "Sure. Where are you thinking?" "How about Morton's?" 7:30. Morton's. An expensive steakhouse. Brandon was trying to impress me, which meant he wanted something. Works for me. I arrived at 7:25 and found Brandon already seated at a corner booth, working through his first scotch. He stood when he saw me, pulling me into a brief hug that felt performed rather than genuine. "Good to see you," he said. "You look good. You been working out?" "Not really." I slid into the booth across from him. Just the same old routine. We made small talk for 20 minutes. Brandon told stories about difficult clients and problem contractors. He asked surface-level questions about my life that didn't require real answers. I could see him building up to something, the way he'd drum his fingers on the table between sips of scotch. Finally, after we'd ordered and the server had left, Brandon leaned forward. "So, I wanted to ask you something. You still work at that software company, right? Nextech?" There it was. "Yeah. Still there. You know anyone higher up? Like in management or leadership?" I kept my face neutral. "I know some people." "Why?" Brandon's expression shifted to something more serious. "We need a partnership with them. Badly. We've got this huge project. Biggest thing we've ever bid on. $87 million. Mixed-use development downtown. Residential, commercial, the works. It's the kind of project that could put us in a whole different category of firm. Sounds great. Congratulations. Well, we haven't got it yet. That's the thing. Brandon signaled the server for another scotch. 3 of our current projects are behind schedule. We've had coordination nightmares, contractor disputes, the usual mess but worse. We need to prove we can handle something this big, and that means having top-tier project management software. That's where Nextech comes in. And you reached out to them? Yeah, couple weeks ago. But they're playing hard to get. Slow to respond, keeping us at arm's length. I don't know if they're working other deals or what, but we need to move faster. He looked at me with something that might have been hope. I thought, maybe you could put in a good word. Use whatever connections you have there. Help us get to the front of the line. I took a slow sip of water, letting the moment stretch. Brandon was offering me $5,000 to help, mentioning the amount like it was significant money. 6 months ago, before I became CEO, $5,000 would have felt substantial. Now it was what I made in about 3 hours. I can see what I can do, I said carefully. No promises. These things have their own timelines. Anything you can do would be huge. Seriously. Brandon's relief was visible. Then he pivoted, his tone becoming more casual again. So, speaking of timelines, Christmas is coming up. You got plans? I waited. This was my chance to address the text message, to confront what Mom had done. But I wanted to see if Brandon would be honest about it. Not really. Probably just quiet. You? Oh, you know. The usual at Mom's house. Though she's being weird about the guest list this year. Wants it smaller, more focused. He waved his hand vaguely. The holidays are complicated, you know? Complicated. That was his explanation. He wasn't going to mention that I'd been explicitly uninvited. He was just going to let me think I'd somehow been forgotten, or that the plans were still uncertain. Yeah, I said. Complicated. We finished dinner making more small talk. Brandon picked up the check, another unusual gesture that confirmed he was trying to butter me up. As we walked out to the parking lot, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. Sorry, I have to take this. It's Stephanie. He answered on speaker without asking if I minded. Hey, what's up? Stephanie's voice came through tense and fast. We have a problem. The Carmichaels just called. They're getting nervous about the whole project. They've heard rumors about our delays, and they want proof we've secured the Nextech partnership before they'll commit their backing. Brandon's face went pale in the parking lot lights. What kind of proof? A signed letter of intent at minimum. Brandon, they're talking about pulling out. If they pull their $40 million, we can't even bid on the project. Everything falls apart. When do they need the letter? They want confirmation by January 5th. Signed partnership agreement, or at least a binding letter of intent. If we can't show them we've locked down the software partnership by then, they're walking. Brandon closed his eyes. Okay, I'll figure it out. I'm working on the Nextech angle right now. You better work fast. We're running out of time. Stephanie hung up. Brandon stood there in the parking lot, phone still in his hand, looking like someone had just told him his house was on fire. He seemed to remember I was there and tried to pull himself together. Sorry about that. Just some work stress. Sounds serious. It's manageable. Just need to move some pieces around. He forced a smile. Thanks for dinner. And seriously, anything you can do with Nextech would save us. I mean that. I nodded and walked to my car. As I drove home, I thought about what I'd just overheard. The investors needed proof of the Nextech partnership by January 5th. The timeline was even tighter than I'd realized. My family's entire company was balanced on a knife edge, and I was the only person who could save them. They just didn't know it was me they were begging. December 20th arrived cold and gray. I was in my office reviewing quarterly projections when my personal email pinged. The sender was Mom. Not a text this time. A formal email with the subject line, Holiday Plans. I opened it, already knowing it would be bad. "Derek," it began. No dear, no hi, just my name, like I was a business associate she barely knew. "As you may know, this year's Christmas dinner will be somewhat different from our usual family gathering. We'll be hosting the Carmichael family, who are major investors in Brandon's new project, as well as the Chen family, who represent some significant international business opportunities for Westfield." I kept reading, my jaw tightening with each sentence. Given the caliber of our guests and the important business relationships we're nurturing, we feel it's best if attendance is limited to family members who reflect the level of success we're celebrating. We think it would be more appropriate for you to visit another time, perhaps in the new year, when it's just family without the business component. More appropriate. Like I was a dinner guest who didn't meet the dress code. The email continued. "I hope you understand this is about business, not personal. We all love you, of course, but sometimes family means making decisions that serve the greater good of everyone involved. Perhaps we can arrange a lunch in January." It was signed Helen, not Mom. Professional, distant. Like she was declining a meeting request from someone she barely knew. I read it 3 times, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. This wasn't a last-minute change or an accidental oversight. This was a calculated decision. They'd discussed it, probably in a family meeting I wasn't invited to. They'd decided I was an embarrassment, a liability to their image, someone who needed to be hidden away when important people were watching. The pain was sharp and familiar. I'd felt it before, in smaller doses, at every family gathering where my career was dismissed, my choices questioned, my life found insufficient. But this was different. This was being erased. This was being told explicitly that I wasn't good enough to sit at my own family's table. I closed the email and sat in silence for a long moment. Then something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but something else rose beside it. Something colder, more calculating. I checked my work calendar. The next tech board meeting to review major partnership proposals was scheduled for December 23rd. Westfield Development's proposal was on the agenda. As CEO, I had final approval authority on all partnerships above $1 million. I had to decide whether to save my family's company or let it collapse. The power of that realization was dizzying. My assistant knocked and entered, carrying a folder. "Derek, we've been getting increased communication from Westfield Development. They're asking for an urgent meeting before the holidays. They're offering to fly anywhere to meet with leadership." "What's the tone?" She hesitated. Desperate. The latest email was marked high priority and mentioned their investor timeline. They're asking for any kind of preliminary approval or indication of interest. "What did you tell them?" "That we'd review their proposal at the scheduled board meeting on the 23rd. Standard protocol." "Good. Keep it standard. No special treatment." She nodded and left. I turned to my computer and pulled up the chain of emails from Westfield. My assistant was right. The tone had shifted from professional courtesy to barely concealed panic. The latest message, sent that morning, included phrases like time-sensitive opportunity and mutually beneficial urgency. I wondered if Brandon knew Mom had sent that email. If Stephanie had been part of the decision. If any of them had considered what it would mean to exclude me, not just from Christmas, but from the basic respect of being treated like family. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from an unknown number. I listened. "Derek, this is your Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. I just heard from a friend who heard from your mother about Christmas plans. I need to talk to you. This is important. Call me back." I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Derek. Thank God. Did Helen really uninvite you from Christmas? She sent an email today. Said I'm not successful enough for their business guests." Patricia's sharp intake of breath was loud through the phone. "That woman. I swear, your father would be furious. Derek, there's something you need to know. Something about your father's will." "What about it?" "There was a clause most of the family doesn't know about. Your father set up a secondary trust, separate from the company inheritance. It's worth about $3 million. The terms specify that if Brandon ever excludes you from major family decisions or gatherings without justifiable cause, the trust transfers to you. My mind went blank for a moment. What? Your father knew Brandon and Helen might try to push you out. He loved Brandon, but he knew his flaws. So he built in protection for you. I'm one of the trust executors. I can trigger the clause. Patricia, I don't want family money. That's not what this is about. I know. But it's the principle. And there's more. The trust terms require clear documentation of exclusion. Helen's email might be enough, but you'd probably have to contest it legally. The family would fight it. Helen would hire the best lawyers she could find. It could take years. So what are you saying? I'm saying, I'm going to Christmas dinner, uninvited. And I'm going to confront Helen about this. She needs to know she can't treat you like this. Patricia, don't. It'll just make things worse. Sometimes things need to get worse before they get better. Your father would have wanted someone to stand up for you. I'll call you after. She hung up before I could argue further. I sat holding my phone, processing everything. A $3 million trust I'd never known about. A legal battle that would tear the family apart. An aunt planning to crash Christmas dinner to defend me. And through it all, my family still had no idea I held their entire business future in my hands. Christmas was about to become a battlefield. And I was the only one who knew all the pieces on the board. December 23rd arrived with freezing rain that made the roads treacherous. I drove carefully to Nextech headquarters, thinking about the decision I'd have to make in a few hours. The board meeting started at 9. 6 partnership proposals were on the agenda. Westfield Development was number 4. The conference room filled with board members, coffee, and the low murmur of pre-meeting conversation. I sat at the head of the table, reviewing the agenda one more time. Marcus, my chief operating officer, gave me a small nod. He knew this proposal was complicated for me, though he didn't know the full extent of the family dysfunction. Let's get started, I said. We moved through the first 3 proposals efficiently. A regional hospital system wanting our software for facility management. Approved. A university needing integrated campus planning systems. Approved with modifications. A manufacturing company requesting custom logistics solutions. Tabled for more information. Then Marcus opened the folder for Westfield Development Group. This is an interesting one, he began. 3-year contract, potentially worth $2.4 million. They're bidding on a major mixed-use development downtown. $87 million project. They need our project management and coordination systems as a core component of their bid. The chief financial officer, Janet, pulled up financial records on the screen. On paper, the numbers work. The project is solid. The timeline is aggressive, but manageable. However, I do have some concerns about Westfield's recent performance. What kind of concerns? Asked board member Thomas Reeves. They've had 3 projects go significantly over timeline in the past 18 months. There are vendor complaints about late payments. Some rumors about internal management issues. Janet looked at me. It's not disqualifying, but it's worth noting. Board member Sarah Chen leaned forward. What's the upside? Why take on a client with red flags? The revenue is good, Marcus said, and if the project succeeds, it opens doors to other major developers. Westfield has been around for 20 years. This could be a temporary rough patch. 3 board members indicated they were comfortable approving the partnership despite the concerns. 2 were hesitant. Everyone looked at me for the deciding vote. I thought about Mom's email. You're not successful enough for our image. I thought about Brandon's condescending comments at every family dinner. About Stephanie's pitying glances at my modest apartment. About being erased from Christmas because I embarrassed them. I thought about my father, who'd built that company from nothing and always believed in me, even when the rest of the family didn't. I'm not comfortable approving this without additional due diligence, I said slowly. The timeline concerns and payment history issues are legitimate. I want to schedule a mandatory in-person meeting with Westfield's CEO and Chief Financial Officer, face-to-face review of their project management capabilities and financial stability. When? Janet asked. I checked my calendar, knowing exactly what I was doing. First available slot is January 7th. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. He knew about the investor deadline. That's after their investor timeline. They need approval by January 5th. Then they should have approached us earlier. We can't compromise our due diligence standards because a client has poor planning. I looked around the table. We've turned down partnerships before when the risk didn't align with our standards. I'm not willing to make an exception here. The board members nodded. The decision was made. Marcus would draft the response letter that afternoon. After the meeting, Marcus caught me in the hallway. You sure about this? That timeline is going to kill their deal. I'm sure. We have protocols for a reason. He studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Your call. I'll send the letter by close of business. I spent the rest of the day in meetings, trying not to think about what I'd just set in motion. But the reality was inescapable. By requiring a meeting after the investor deadline, I'd effectively killed my family's partnership with Nextech. And without that partnership, their investors would walk. Without the investors, the $87 million project would collapse. And without that project, their entire company was in serious trouble. I drove home that evening through the freezing rain, my windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm. Christmas Eve. Tomorrow my family would be decorating Mom's house, preparing for the big dinner. The dinner I wasn't invited to. I ordered Chinese food and put on an old movie, something black and white and comforting. My phone stayed silent. No calls from Brandon or Stephanie or Mom. No one reached out to say, Merry Christmas Eve. No one checked in to see how I was doing during the holidays. Around 9, I made the mistake of checking Instagram. Stephanie had posted a series of photos from Mom's house. The Christmas tree was massive and perfectly decorated, probably by a professional. The dining room table was set with what looked like new china. Everything was staged and perfect, and designed to project success. The caption read, Grateful for family and success. Hosting tomorrow's celebration with so much gratitude for all the blessings this year has brought. I stared at that caption for a long time. Grateful for family. Just not all of it. Just the parts that looked good in photos. I turned off my phone and tried to sleep, but my mind kept circling back to the decision I'd made. I could have approved the partnership. I could have saved their company with a single word. Instead, I'd chosen due diligence and protocol. Had I done the right thing? Or had I let years of hurt and resentment guide a decision that should have been purely professional? At 11, my work phone rang. Marcus. I almost didn't answer. Derek. Sorry to call on Christmas Eve. But we've got a situation. What kind of situation? Westfield found out about the January 7th meeting requirement. I don't know how. Maybe they have contacts in our admin department. Brandon called me directly on my cell. He's losing his mind. What did he say? That the investor deadline is January 5th. That pushing the meeting past that date is deliberately sabotaging their timeline. He was practically begging me to escalate to you, to see if we could move the meeting up. What did you tell him? That the CEO's decision stands, and our protocols exist for good reasons. But Derek, he was in bad shape. Like, breakdown-level stress. I think this might really destroy their company. I closed my eyes. The meeting stays January 7th. If they want to withdraw their proposal, that's their choice. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Okay. I'll send a confirmation email tomorrow. Merry Christmas, boss. Merry Christmas, Marcus. I hung up and sat in the dark living room, the Christmas lights from neighboring apartments casting colored shadows through my windows. Tomorrow, while my family celebrated and networked and projected their image of success, their company would be quietly collapsing. And they still didn't know I was the one who'd made it happen. I woke Christmas morning to my phone vibrating like it was having a seizure. 17 missed calls, 34 text messages. I scrolled through them with growing disbelief. Brandon had called 15 times starting at 6 in the morning. Stephanie twice. Mom hadn't called once, but she'd sent 12 text messages. Brandon's texts escalated from urgent to desperate. Call me now. Emergency. Derek, please. Company crisis. I know it's Christmas, but I need to talk to you immediately. Stephanie's were shorter. Are you awake? Brandon needs to talk to you. Do you actually know someone at Nextech? He says you do. Please help. But Mom's texts were different. Cold. Transactional. There was no Merry Christmas, no acknowledgement of the holiday. Just, Brandon mentioned you have a contact at a software company. We need you to make an introduction immediately. This is urgent family business. And then, Derek, this is not a request. Call Brandon right now. I noted the irony. I wasn't family enough for Christmas dinner, but I was family when they needed something. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I made coffee, went for a long run through the cold morning, and came back to shower. My phone continued buzzing. More calls, more texts. The desperation was increasing with each message. By noon, I'd read the news, had a leisurely breakfast, and still hadn't responded. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me felt a cold satisfaction at their panic. At 2 p.m, someone started pounding on my apartment door. Heavy, urgent knocking that didn't stop. I looked through the peephole. Brandon. He looked terrible. His hair was uncombed, his eyes were red, and he was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt that looked like he'd slept in it. I opened the door. Brandon. Thank God. He pushed past me into the apartment. I've been calling you all morning. Why didn't you answer? It's Christmas. I was taking the day off. He spun to face me, and I saw he was close to tears. Actually close to tears. I'd never seen my brother cry, not even at Dad's funeral. Derek, I need your help. The Nextech thing, it's falling apart. They scheduled our meeting for January 7th, but our investors need confirmation by January 5th. Without that confirmation, the Carmicals are pulling their $40 million. Without their $40 million, we can't bid on the project. And if we can't prove we're capable of landing major projects, 2 of our current projects might lose their financing too. Everything is collapsing. I heard you were having some trouble. I'm sorry about that. I need you to call whoever you know at Nextech. Get them to move the meeting up. Or just give us some kind of preliminary approval, a letter of intent, anything we can show the investors. Please. His voice cracked on the last word. Brandon, I can't just call in favors like that. These companies have processes. I'll pay you. He pulled out his phone, opening his banking app. $50,000 right now. I'll transfer it right now, if you can make this happen. This isn't about money. 100,000 then. Derek, please. I know I've been a terrible brother. I know we excluded you from Christmas. That was wrong. I should have fought Mom on that. I should have stood up for you years ago, when she started treating you like you didn't matter. I was weak and I was wrong and I'm sorry. The tears started falling. But please, the company Dad built is going to collapse. Everything he worked for. Gone. I felt something crack in my chest. Brandon was genuinely broken. This wasn't manipulation or performance. This was real desperation and real remorse. Then his phone rang. He glanced at it and his face went even paler. It's Mom. I have to take this. He answered on speaker without asking. Mom? Helen's voice was sharp and impatient. Did you get him to help? We don't have time for feelings and apologies right now. Make him understand. This is about the family legacy, not whatever petty grudges he's holding. Not an apology. Not even acknowledgement that they'd hurt me. Just demands and accusations of pettiness. The crack in my chest sealed back up. The cold calculation returned. Tell her I'll see what I can do, I said to Brandon. I need you to send me all the details about the Nextech situation. Everything you have. Brandon's face flooded with hope. Really? You'll help? I'll make some calls. See what's possible. No promises. He practically ran to his phone, sending me documents through email. The proposal they'd submitted, the timeline, the investor requirements. All of it laid out in desperate detail. Thank you, he said, wiping his eyes. Seriously, thank you. I'll wait to hear from you." After he left, I sat down at my laptop and opened the documents he'd sent. I was looking at my own company's correspondence. My own decision documented in official emails. The meeting scheduled for January 7th by my own order. I opened my personal email and drafted a message to Marcus and Janet, checking in on the Westfield situation. Has there been any change in their proposal or our timeline? Marcus responded within an hour, even though it was Christmas. No changes. They've reached out 3 more times today asking for expedited review, getting pretty desperate. Also, for your information, their legal team sent us something this morning. What kind of something? A legal letter threatening action for unreasonable delay tactics and bad faith negotiation. They're claiming we're deliberately sabotaging their investor timeline, and they're prepared to pursue damages if we don't finalize the partnership by December 28th. I stared at the screen in disbelief. My family wasn't just asking for help. They were threatening to sue me. Without knowing it was me, they were threatening. "Forward me the letter," I typed. The document came through a minute later. It was professionally written, aggressive, and included phrases like significant legal resources at our disposal, and will pursue all available remedies for damages incurred. The letter was signed by Westfield's general counsel, but copied to Brandon, Helen, and the entire board. They were threatening legal action against my company because I wouldn't rush our protocols to save them. I forwarded the letter to our legal counsel with a note. "Please prepare our formal response. Standard legal protocols apply. No special accommodations for this client." Then, I sent a message to Marcus. "Regarding Westfield development, the January 7th meeting date stands. Given the legal threats, please ensure all future communication goes through our legal team." I closed my laptop and walked to my window. It was snowing now, big fat flakes that turned the city soft and quiet. Christmas Day. The day my family was hosting important guests, projecting success, celebrating themselves. The day their company started its final collapse, and they'd done it to themselves by threatening the one person who could have saved them. December 26th arrived with voicemails and texts, but this time they weren't from my family. They were from Patricia. "Derek, call me as soon as you get this. Christmas dinner was a disaster, an absolute disaster. I need to tell you what happened." I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with anger and something that might have been satisfaction. "I went to dinner," she said without preamble. "Showed up at 2 like I owned the place. Helen tried to turn me away at the door, but I pushed past her. There were about 20 people there. The Carmichaels, some business partners, a few people from the company board. Patricia, what did you do?" I asked loudly why my nephew wasn't at Christmas dinner. Helen tried to deflect, said it was complicated, that you had other plans. So I pulled out my phone and read her email out loud. The whole, "not successful enough for our image" part. In front of everyone. I closed my eyes. Oh no. Oh yes. Helen turned purple. She tried to say I was taking it out of context, that it was a misunderstanding. So I asked Brandon directly why his brother wasn't there. He just stood there frozen. Couldn't answer. Then Stephanie tried to smooth things over by saying, "You were helping with a business situation, and that's why you couldn't make it." They told people I was helping them? That's when it got really interesting. I asked what business situation. Brandon started explaining about the Nextech partnership, how critical it was, how you had connections there, and were working to help them get approval. The Carmichaels were listening to all of this. Patricia paused. "Derek, they heard everything. About Westfield excluding you from Christmas. About them begging you for help with the software company. All of it. What did they do?" Thomas Carmichael, the main investor, just stood up. He told his wife they were leaving. Brandon tried to stop him, but Carmichael said something like, "I don't invest in companies with this kind of family dysfunction and poor judgment." They were gone before dessert. I sat down slowly. They pulled their investment? Worse. By midnight, they'd sent a formal withdrawal letter. Helen forwarded it to me in a rage, like it was somehow my fault. The letter cited concerns about management stability and judgment. Without the Carmichaels' $40 million, Westfield can't even bid on the project. Patricia, this is going to destroy the company. Maybe it should. Maybe that's what needs to happen for these people to learn basic human decency. She sighed. But I'm worried I made things worse for you. Helen called you ungrateful and vindictive for not helping immediately. Brandon had some kind of breakdown after the investors left. He's not answering anyone's calls. Stephanie posted then deleted some Instagram story about fake family. None of this is your fault, but I triggered it by showing up. Derek, I have to ask you something. What exactly do you do at Nextech? The question hung in the air. I could deflect. I could maintain the confidentiality. Or I could trust the one family member who'd ever stood up for me. I'm the CEO, I said quietly. Patricia was silent for several seconds. Then, oh my God, it's you. You're the one they need. The one they've been begging. The one they're calling unsuccessful. Yeah. How long? 6 months. The board wanted it kept quiet during a merger negotiation. Only executives knew. Does your mother know? Does Brandon? No. They've never asked what I actually do. They just assumed I was some low-level employee. Patricia laughed, but it was a bitter sound. The irony is perfect. It's too perfect. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. You could destroy them. One decision, and the whole company collapses. I know. But you could also save them. One decision, and they survive. I know that too. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Patricia said, your father would be proud of who you've become. Even if the rest of them can't see it. Whatever you decide, make sure it's what you can live with. We hung up. I spent the rest of the morning pacing my apartment, thinking through options and consequences. Then my email pinged. The sender was Thomas Carmichael. I opened it with growing confusion. Mr. Derek, it began. After the unfortunate events at Christmas dinner, I did some research. I discovered your position at Nextech Solutions. First, let me say congratulations on your success. You're clearly far more capable than your family gives you credit for. Second, I have a proposition that doesn't involve them. I'm interested in pursuing a different development project, and I'd like to partner with you directly and with Nextech. I'm prepared to invest $60 million in a venture that would utilize your software systems extensively. The partnership would be between my investment group, you personally as a developer and principal, and Nextech as the technology provider. Westfield Development would not be involved. I believe we could build something significant together, and I'd prefer to work with someone who has your integrity and professional standards. Please consider this carefully. I think we could do great things. Regards, Thomas Carmichael. I read the email 3 times. Carmichael was offering me the chance to become a major real estate developer myself, using the same investor my family had just lost, cutting them out entirely. I could take this offer, partner with Carmichael, build my own empire, watch my family's company collapse while I rose from its ashes. The vindication would be absolute. The revenge, perfect. I sat with that feeling for several hours. Let myself imagine it. The success, the proof that I was more than they'd ever believed. The satisfaction of showing them exactly how wrong they'd been. But as the afternoon wore on, the satisfaction started feeling hollow. I thought about my father's funeral 3 years ago. He'd pulled me aside the day before he died, just the 2 of us in the hospital room. I hadn't known it would be our last real conversation. Don't let them make you small, he'd said, his voice weak but clear. But don't let anger make you small either. You're better than that. Better than all of us, in ways we might never understand. Stay good, Derek. That's harder than being successful, but it's what matters. I'd thought I understood what he meant. Now, sitting with the power to destroy or save my family, I understood it fully. Revenge wouldn't make me bigger. It would make me smaller. It would turn me into someone defined by their hurt, by their rejection, by their inability to see my worth. Real power wasn't in destroying people who hurt you. It was in being secure enough to extend grace without compromising your boundaries. I opened my laptop and started drafting an email. December 27th, I called an emergency board meeting for December 28th at Nextech. Marcus looked confused when I put it on the calendar. We just met on the 23rd. What's the emergency? Westfield Development. I want to revisit our approach. The board gathered the next morning, curious and slightly annoyed at the holiday interruption. I'd spent all night preparing a presentation, working through scenarios and terms. I want to propose a highly unusual arrangement, I began. We offer Westfield Development a partnership, but with strict, non-negotiable conditions. Janet frowned. We decided against them. They threatened us legally. Why are we reconsidering? Because I think there's a path forward that protects our interests, while potentially salvaging a company that's facing collapse. But only if they agree to significant structural changes. I outlined my proposal. Westfield would get their partnership, but the conditions were severe. Brandon would step down as CEO and move to Chief Operations Officer, a role better suited to his actual skills. An independent management consultant, selected by Nextech, would join Westfield's board with veto power over major decisions. The partnership contract would include aggressive performance benchmarks, and if Westfield missed them, Nextech could terminate without penalty. And one more condition. My identity as Nextech's CEO would be disclosed to Westfield's leadership before any contract was signed. You want them to know it's you? Marcus asked. They need to know. They need to understand exactly who they were dismissing. The board was skeptical. Sarah Chen asked the obvious question. Why do this? They threatened us. They treated you terribly personally. Why extend this olive branch? I thought about my answer carefully. Because holding power over someone's destruction doesn't make you powerful. It makes you controlled by them, just in a different way. I don't want to be defined by their rejection anymore. I want to be defined by who I choose to be. The board voted. The motion passed, though not unanimously. I sent an email to Brandon, Helen, and Stephanie. This is Derek. I need to meet with you tomorrow, December 29th, at Nextech Solutions offices, 10 a.m. All three of you need to be there. This is about the partnership. Brandon responded in under a minute. We'll be there. Thank you. Thank you so much. December 29th was cold and clear. I arrived at the office early and prepared the conference room. At 9:50, our receptionist called. The Westfield Development people are here. Send them up. I watched them walk down the hallway through the glass walls. Brandon looked exhausted. Helen was composed but tense. Stephanie kept looking around nervously, taking in the modern office space, the expensive art, the obvious success of the company. They were led to the executive conference room. I was sitting at the head of the table when they entered. The recognition was immediate, but delayed, like their brains couldn't process what they were seeing. Helen spoke first. Derek? What are you doing here? I work here. Brandon looked confused. You set up the meeting? Where's the CEO? Where's Thomas Brennan? I slid my business card across the table. It was simple, elegant. Derek Westfield, Chief Executive Officer, Nextech Solutions. The silence was absolute. Helen's face went pale. Stephanie's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Brandon picked up the card like it might be fake, turning it over in his hands. This is a joke, Helen finally said. Some kind of elaborate joke. It's not a joke. I've been CEO for 6 months. Before that, I was Chief Technology Officer for 3 years. I built half the systems this company runs on. I've been here the whole time you were calling my career unsuccessful. Brandon's face went through a rapid series of emotions. Disbelief, realization, horror, shame. You're the one we've been trying to reach. You're the one who scheduled the meeting for January 7th. That's right. You could have approved our partnership weeks ago. You've been watching us panic, watching our company fall apart. You let the Carmichells walk away. You let everything collapse. Helen's shock was turning to anger. What kind of person does that? The question hung in the air. I let it sit for a moment before answering. The kind of person who wasn't successful enough for Christmas dinner. The words landed like a physical blow. Brandon dropped his head into his hands. Stephanie started crying quietly. Even Helen flinched. "I have a partnership offer for Westfield Development," I continued. "But it comes with conditions. Non-negotiable conditions." I outlined the terms. Brandon stepping down as CEO. The independent consultant on the board. The performance benchmarks. The termination clauses. Helen immediately objected. "Brandon stepping down is unacceptable. He's been running that company for 3 years. Into the ground," I said flatly. 3 projects over budget, vendor complaints, late payments, reputation damage. He's not capable of managing a company this size, and we both know it. Brandon stopped Helen before she could respond. "Mom, stop. Please just stop." His voice was thick with emotion. "He's right. I'm not capable. Dad knew it. That's probably why his will had that trust clause for Derek. I'm a good operations guy. I can manage contractors and schedules. But I can't run a whole company. I've been failing for 3 years, and pretending everything was fine." It was the first truly honest thing I'd heard Brandon say in years. Stephanie wiped her eyes. "Why are you offering this at all? You could just let us fail. After everything we did to you, why not just let it all collapse? Because I'm not going to let your cruelty turn me into someone cruel. You wanted me to prove I was successful enough for the family? This is me proving it. Not by destroying you, but by being better than you were to me." We sat in silence. Helen looked like she wanted to argue, but she had nothing left to argue with. They needed this partnership desperately, and we all knew it. "Do you accept the conditions?" I asked. Brandon nodded. "We accept. All of them." Helen started to protest, but Brandon cut her off. "Mom, we don't have a choice. And even if we did, he's offering us more than we deserve." We spent the next 2 hours with Nextech's legal team, drafting the partnership agreement. Brandon would transition to Chief Operations Officer effective immediately. The independent consultant would start in January. The performance benchmarks were aggressive, but achievable if they actually fixed their management problems. As they were leaving, Brandon stopped at the door. "Thank you. I know that's not enough. I know sorry isn't enough either. But thank you for being a better person than I was a brother." I nodded. There wasn't much else to say. Over the next weeks, the partnership moved forward. I declined Carmichael's offer, but connected him with another development firm that could use his investment. Brandon genuinely stepped into his new role and seemed relieved to be free of responsibilities he'd never wanted. The independent consultant started identifying and fixing the systemic problems at Westfield. I maintained professional distance. This was a business relationship now, not a family one. But in late April, something changed. I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, from Brandon. "Derek, I know you probably don't want to hear from me outside of business, but Thanksgiving is coming up in a few months, and I wanted to reach out now, before it gets close. I'm hosting this year. Not Mom, me, no business associates, no image to maintain, just family, and I mean actually just family, the people who should matter. Would you come? I don't expect you to say yes. I haven't earned that, but I wanted to ask anyway. Not because we need anything from you, just because I miss my brother and I want to do better. Brandon." I stared at that letter for a long time. When Thanksgiving arrived, I drove to Brandon's house with my stomach in knots. The door opened before I could knock. Brandon stood there, older looking than 6 months ago, but somehow lighter too. "You came. I'm here." Dinner was awkward at first. Mom was there, and she didn't apologize directly, but she asked about my work with genuine interest for the first time in years. Stephanie talked about starting therapy to work on her priorities and values. Brandon's wife quietly thanked me for saving their family's company. Patricia was there too. She winked at me across the table. It wasn't perfect. The wounds were still fresh. The relationships would take years to rebuild, if they ever fully did. But it was real in a way our family gatherings hadn't been in a long time. After dinner, Brandon and I stood on his back porch, watching the cold November sunset. "I've been thinking a lot about Dad," he said, "about what he would think of all this." "Yeah? I think he'd be disappointed in how I treated you. But I think he'd be proud of what you did, how you handled it." I didn't respond immediately. I was thinking about my father's hospital room, about his last words to me. "He told me not to let anger make me small," I said finally. It took almost losing everything to understand what he meant. What did he mean? That revenge is easy. That destruction is easy. That the hard thing, the thing that actually requires strength, is staying human, staying good, even when people hurt you. Maybe especially then. Brandon nodded slowly. "I don't think I could have done what you did. Extended that partnership after everything. I didn't do it for you. I did it for me. Because I needed to know I could have that kind of power and not abuse it. That I could be better than the hurt someone caused me." We stood in silence for a while. Then Brandon said, "I looked at that trust Dad set up for you. The $3 million one. Patricia mentioned. I don't want it. I know. But I talked to the executors. We're releasing it to you anyway. Not because you need it, but because it was Dad's wish. He wanted you protected. He wanted you to have something that was yours, that we couldn't take away." He paused. "I'm sorry we made him feel like you needed protecting from your own family." I felt something loosening in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. "Thank you for stepping down as CEO," I said. "That took courage. It took desperation. And your honesty. I've been pretending to be something I'm not for years. It's exhausting. The new role fits better. I'm good at operations. I'm good at managing projects and people. I was just terrible at the big picture stuff. The company's doing better because of the changes you forced. The consultant you brought in found problems I didn't even know existed. We would have collapsed completely within a year if things had kept going the way they were." We went back inside as it got darker. The evening ended early, everyone aware that we were still rebuilding and couldn't push too hard. But as I drove home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years around my family. Peace. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. Not because the hurt had disappeared. It hadn't. But because I'd made a choice that I could live with. I'd held enormous power over people who'd hurt me, and I'd chosen not to destroy them. I'd chosen to be better than their worst moments. And in doing that, I'd freed myself from the weight of their rejection. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Brandon. "Thank you again for coming today. I know it wasn't easy. I hope we can do this again. Not because of business. Just because you're my brother and I want to know you." I typed back, "One step at a time," because that was the truth. Healing wasn't instant. Forgiveness wasn't automatic. But it was possible if both sides were willing to do the work. I thought about where I'd been a year ago. Dismissed, overlooked, treated like I didn't matter. I thought about where I was now, CEO of a successful company, making decisions that affected millions of dollars and dozens of lives, respected by my board and my employees. But more than any of that, I was someone who'd faced the temptation of vindictive power and chosen grace instead. Someone who'd been hurt deeply and refused to pass that hurt forward. Someone who'd proven that success wasn't about climbing over others or crushing people who underestimated you. Real success was being secure enough in yourself that you didn't need to prove anything to anyone. It was being able to extend a hand even when you had every right to pull it back. It was choosing who you wanted to be over who your circumstances tried to make you. My family had taught me what I didn't want to become. Their rejection had forced me to build a life that didn't depend on their approval. And in the end, that independence had given me the freedom to help them without needing anything in return. 6 months later, Westfield Development successfully completed the $87 million project, on time, under budget. With glowing reviews from the investors and city officials. Nextech's software had been central to the coordination effort, and the partnership had generated even more revenue than we'd projected. Brandon sent me a bottle of expensive scotch with a note. We couldn't have done this without you. In more ways than one. I didn't drink the scotch. I put it on a shelf in my office where I could see it. A reminder of what grace looks like in practice. Of what it means to have power and choose mercy. Because at the end of the day, that's what this whole story taught me. Power isn't about control or dominance or revenge. Power is about choice. The choice to be cruel or kind. To diminish or elevate. To destroy or build. I'd been given the power to destroy my family's company, to prove they were wrong about me in the most devastating way possible. And I'd chosen something harder and better. I'd chosen to be the person my father believed I could be. The person I wanted to see when I looked in the mirror. And that, more than any professional success or family reconciliation, was the real victory. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you had the power to get revenge on someone who hurt you? What did you choose to do? Was it worth it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your own path. And share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that sometimes the greatest strength is in choosing grace over grudges, and that your worth is never determined by people who can't see it. Wishing you all the courage to be better than the hurt others cause you.